after text pre-processing, now we have to go into the text analysis technique. So, the basic text analysis technique that we are already like exposed to are stemming and lemmatization. So, in this lecture I am going to talk about text analysis, especially stemming and lemmatization. So, stemming and lemmatizations are kind of linguistic representation of words where we are trying to find out a representation of a particular type from the given word. Now, what is stemming? It refers to slicing the word with the intention of removing the affixes. So, what are these affixes? Affixes in languages can be a suffix which are added later, like end of the word. It can be a prefix that can be added in the front side of the word, okay, the popular two affixes. Now, it is nothing but crude chopping of affixes. Okay. So, sometimes stemming is problematic thing because it will not work in all application, because sometimes it produces the words which are not there in the languages, or it can also produce words which have a different meaning. So, again the stemming is a language dependent task. It is not like the tokenization and other steps that we have talked, because most of the time languages may use different same kind of tokenization, like dot is being used as a sentence boundary. In English, similarly in Hindi, danda is being used as a sentence boundary. In other languages, there is a list of elements that can be utilized to identify what is the boundary. But when it comes to the stemming, it is not the case, because it is a language dependent. It is about the words that are being used in languages, right. So, for example, arguing, after removing the ing, that is the suffix, we can get argue as a stem. Now, argu might not be a meaningful element in the isolation. Similarly, playing, where ing can be removed, but play looks like a more acceptable word form even in isolation. And news, if we are actually going for a crude stemming technique, that as may look like plural marker or a third person singular marker, like play in plays or book as a noun in books. And flies, again removing es, what we left with is fli. And caring is what important thing, because sometimes languages work in a totally different way. So, that means sometimes when we remove something, we have to add something else. This kind of process, what we call is morphophonemic process in languages. So, morphophonemic process helps us in identifying what to be added and what to be deleted. So, similarly, in the case of caring, the stem, if it is a CAR, we may try to pronounce it as car, that is CAR, which might look like in form by similar to car, but actual form what we need to get is CARE, right. So, in this case of stemming process, this morphophonemic process might not help us, because it just identify the affixes and try to delete them. So, similarly, there are other examples that are being given here. You can say the same caring into CAR, and studied into removing ED, and running after removing ING, which is like in the playing case also same, and happiness with HAPPI, right. So, now these are the stemmed form. Now, the advantages of using stemming is it is fast and simple to implement, right. So, if we know the list of affixes in our languages, we can just simply put them as bag of words, and again pattern match using some kind of regular expression, and you can easily remove. And it reduces dimensionality of text data, making it easier to analyze. That is because each of the text word that we carry might have a different meaning when it is being pronounced or being realized in a different way. So, sometimes using the stemming, we can identify after removing the affixes, what we identified might be a suitable one for the context. But disadvantages of stemming is sometimes they are too aggressive and they lead to non-words, as we have seen just now in caring case. Caring cannot be car, right. So, similarly studies cannot be STUDI. right. So, it may result in words where their original meaning is been lost. Okay. So, that is why the second important technique that can be utilized is lemmatization of words. So, lemmatization has the objective of reducing a word to its base form, that is called lemma. So, now the grouping together different forms of the same word with under a group called lemma might help us. Now, let us see an example. So, let us say a word like girl has lot of inflections. Inflections again are nothing but adding some grammatical values to the word. So, girl, girls, girl with apostrophe s and girls with apostrophe s, right. So, now the suffixes here is in this case 0, this is s, this is apostrophe and s, and this is s with apostrophe, right. So, now the reduced information from here after deleting all the suffixes is girl. Now, the girl is nothing but it is being realized differently in all this context by the addition of some kind of suffixes, right. So, now girl is the lemma. So, now we are trying to group together different forms of the same word and trying to find out what would be the lemma. So, similarly in this case, if I take a word like baby, again baby can have babies as a plural and baby can have baby as a possessive form, babies teeth kind of thing, and babies can also have plural, right. Now, after pattern matching the common element across the thing, now what we actually leave here is only BAB. Now, BAB can be a stem, but it is not a root, right. So, this is a stem. Now, the root is across all these words. The one word which is common is only nothing but BABY. So, now we are reversing the phonemic process. The process says that whenever you have BABY plus yes, that is a plural marker, it results into BABIES, right. So, but what will happen if I have a day? Day plus S is not resulting in DAIES, but it is actually DAYS, right. So, now the process, morphophonemic process tells you that okay, whatever word ends with Y, you cannot change it into IES when you add the plural. Now, what is the other thing that we can identify why in this case is changed into IES? Maybe some more example we can see to identify this one. Let us take an example like let us say lady. Okay, lady can become ladies, but let us say way cannot become again, way is only not VAIES. So, now the common pattern if you could identify in this data, the 4 data that we have. So, Y is preceded by a consonant in this case, but whereas Y in way and day is preceded by a vowel. So, now the rule here is wherever there is a Y and preceded by let us say a consonant, then change that Y into IES. Whereas there is a vowel followed by a Y, then do not change that one, keep it as it is and just add Y as it is with S, right. So, these are simple phonological rules which helps us in identifying where to add a particular marker and where not, right. So, this is a kind of linguistic thing. Now, this process need to be understood in every language when we want to do the lemmatization. So, lemma is nothing but reduced stem, but it is a meaningful element that you could find it in the dictionary. Okay. So, now we have to find correct dictionary head word form. So, in the case of ladies, LADY is the head form. So, that identification is required, and what would be sometimes the correct head word if the forms are of different shapes. For example, again am or is can be reduced to a head word called B. Similarly, car, cars, car with apostrophe s, cars with apostrophe s can be reduced to car as a head word. So, now if you have a context, the boys' cars are different colors. Now the boys, the lemma is boy, cars, the lemma is car, ours lemma is B, and different is different, and colors is color. So now this is the lemmatized text that we can get it from the actual lemmatizer technique. Okay. Now lemmatization and stemmings are mutually exclusive, as we see. The former is much more resource intensive in terms of lemmatizer I am talking. So this is much more resource intensive than the latter. That is because identification of the phonological process, how the sound pattern is being realized in different places in different way is very important to get into the lemmatizer task. Okay. Now how it works? It requires a detailed understanding of the word and its part of speech and the context it into the correct form. And now if you have a caring as another word, again the lemma should be care instead of CAR, which we have seen earlier. So studies, now the lemma is study, running, the lemma is run, better, the lemma is good. Good, better, best are the different degrees of adjectives. Okay. So now the advantages and disadvantages of using lemmatization is, of course, advantage is it is a more accurate than the stemming because it produces real words and it maintains the meaning and grammatical correctness of words. Now the disadvantage is every language is very rich in their some sort of phonological processes. Identifying them, understanding them and implementing them is a little complex thing in some languages, and it requires additional resources. It is not only the words that we come up with, it needs an additional resources like dictionary or part of speech tagging kind of thing. Okay. Now as we understood now, the stemming and lemmatization are two different processes and the result of these two processes are totally different. So in the case of interchange, interchanger, interchangeable, interchanging, the stem over here is interchange without E because that is a maximal match across the list of words we got. On the other hand, lemmatization, we are trying to find out the meaningful element from the given list of words. So now interchange is the lemmatized word. Now let us do the comparison between stemming and lemmatization. So stemming can be easily done using some kind of rule based where list down all kind of suffixes, affixes in the language. On the other hand, lemmatization requires dictionary because if you are reducing the list of words into a word which is meaningful, identifying what would be the meaningful, we might need dictionary there. So we also can consider pure tagging here. And the result of stemming is a stem. Of course, it may not be a real word, but whereas lemma is always a real word. And building this one is faster and less computationally intensive, whereas lemmatization might take little time but more computationally intensive. And accuracy wise, it is less accurate because it might produce something which is not there in the language or it is producing something which is ambiguous, right. So it may distort the meaning, whereas lemmatization is always more accurate and it tries to preserve the meaning. And the use cases are, this is simple text processing technique, whereas lemmatization is used for advanced text analysis and NLP tasks, right. So the examples of running and studies, you could see the difference in the stemming and the lemmatization part. Okay. Now what is the practical application of them? Because stemming, though it looks like not so or preferred kind of technique, but it still be a useful technique for certain application. So especially when we are working with search engines, so reducing variation of words to their base form, which helps us in improving the search results. So run might also return, let us say running and ran from different text when we are searching it as a query in, let us say, search engine. And text mining, of course, simplifies the words in a large data set, making it easier to analyze the patterns. So, when you have multiple list of words, the types from the tokens are very less. So, identifying the types only through the stemming purpose, we can still use them. Whereas the practical application of lemmatization is, it helps us in machine translation, because sometimes we need to ensure that the word translated accurately with maintaining that base form. There it can be implemented. And in sentiment analysis, when we have multiple words, identifying a common base form might help us. And in speech recognition also, it helps us in identifying the correct form to improve their transcription accuracy. Okay, in this video we can see the code demo on how we can implement stemming and lemmatization using Python packages as well as Python code. Okay, so to build that stemming, as we already seen, stemming requires a bag of suffixes or affixes in a given language. And when a given word is being given given as an input, strip off all the suffixes, or I will call it affixes, from the bag of words. So, the remaining part we can call it as a stem. Now, you see the function of simple stem is being built using the list of suffixes. This list of suffixes in English, let us say ing, ed, ly, es, s, ment and ness. So, each of the suffixes are being iterated, and if a word ends with this kind of suffixes, then now what we have to return is the remaining part of the word. So, now when you have running, studied, happiness and cares, so now what we have to get the output as run, study, happy and care. And let me run this thing. Now, when you are running, now this ing, ed and ness and s from here supposed to be identified, and we should get the output. Now, as you see, now run, study, but in the case of happiness, it is not identified. I will tell you why. Again, caring, in the case of cares, es is been identified. So, what it does is, when you have list of suffixes, it goes in order. So, in the case of happiness, the first suffix it encounter is s. So, automatically first s is being deleted. Let us say we are changing the position of s and ness in this list. What will happen? So, I am putting this before, let us say es. Will it change in any way? We can just experiment, but mostly it will not change, because this list will be again alphabetized when it has been given. Okay, good. Now, NASS is been given in the beginning, so there is no alphabetization. Now, NES is being deleted. Now, what we get is SJPPI. So, now this is the stemming information that we got it from this small code. Now, let us go into the lemmatization. So, to get the lemmatizer as a kind of function, because lemmatization requires some kind of linguistic understanding. So, in languages, again, there are a lot of words which are irregular, right. So, better the lemma is good, let us say worse, bad, caring, care. I am just giving some example as a bag of words. Again, these are all irregulars. So, when this irregular comes, automatically identify, let us say the lemma. It is a very, very simple way of implementing it, but normally there are multiple ways, which we will see it in the later when we are talking about the morphological analyzer as one of the tool. Now, similarly the suffixes are being identified. So, each of the suffixes again being identified. If a word comes with, let us say, running, study, better, caring kind of thing. So, right now we have given it as a kind of list of words, but normally we have to get the root word. So, this will result you in run, study, good, care, if you are implementing it some kind of phonological rule. Okay. Now this stemming can be also done by using different kind of packages. So NLTK is one kind of package where we can import the Porter stemmer. So this Porter stemmer helps us just when you have a word, now when you just pass on the word list of words into the Porter stemmer, it gives you different kind of lemma word, but in certain cases there is some mistakes that can happen. Similarly, okay, since it is a stemming, of course this is acceptable. In the case of lemmatization also, lemmatization uses different kind of knowledge, right. So from the NLTK again we can use WordNet and other list of resources. Using these resources, now we can use the word, first POS tag it, and after POS tagging find out the actual root of that particular word from the dictionary. So now this will result you in running changes into run, studies changing into study, better changes into well, and caring changes into care, and happiness changes into, actually it should be happy if you are looking for removing all kind of suffixes, but here it comes as happiness. So using this stemming and lemmatization basic techniques, we can pre-process the text before going into a bigger application. Thank you.